Hello juniors, and for this video we're going to be going over Boolean logic. So Boolean logic is something that we've used throughout all of our programs, but now we're just going to talk about it a little bit so that you can get a better understanding of it. So here's a little definition of Boolean logic. Boolean logic is the data type that only has two values, either true or false. So Boolean is used to make comparisons and controlling the way programs flow. So when you're thinking about Boolean logics, when you use them, you're using them for conditional statements. So let's make a Boolean, and we'll just set it to true. So if Boolean is true, then print. And that's kind of the whole idea of Boolean logic, is that you have Boolean, you have something that can either be true or false, which is then put into a conditional statement, and then that controls the flow of your program. So we're going to be learning a little bit more about this, and talking about different comparison operators, different logical operators, and then talking about the flow control of our programs. So there's 6 different types of comparison operators. We have equals. So let me make 2 variables right here. We'll just make it variable 1 equals 1, and variable 2 equals 2. So to use these examples, we can compare these in different ways using our comparison operators. So we have we can say variable 1 equals variable 2, and we've used this before, but this is just saying this is just comparing whether variable 1 equals variable 2. And we know from looking at the variables that this will come back false, because variable 1 is 1, which does not equal variable 2, which is 2. So that's one of the types of logical or comparison operators. And this is what we know as a conditional statement, which can go inside of if statements to control or while loops, but they're just conditions that can come back true or false. So the next comparison operator that you're going to go over is, or that we'll talk about, is is not equal to. So we know that this one comes back false. This one will come back true, because variable 1 does not equal variable 2. That is true. So the best way to kind of understand these comparison operators is to just read them through and then think of them as a true or false statement. So if we kind of word this like on a test, we can say variable 1 is equal to variable 2. So that would come back as false, we know from the first one. So this is the same as this. So now if we write the next one, variable 1 is not equal to variable 2. So is variable 1 not equal to variable 2? Yes, so that's true. So it gets a little weird with these when you have these double negatives in it, because if a false and a not and a negative and all that, it just gets confusing. But you just have to write it out and think about it for a sec, and then you can really understand it. So I'll actually move this up to here so that we don't get too confused. But so this is saying variable 1 is equal to variable 2, which returns false, because we know variable 1 is not equal to variable 2. And this conditional statement is saying variable 1 is not equal to variable 2, which comes back true, because variable 1 is not equal to variable 2. So then the next comparison operator we're going to go over is less than. So variable 1 is less than variable 2. And we know from looking at this that it will come back true because variable 1 equals 1 and variable 2 equals 2. So 1 is less than 2, which is true. Alternatively, we can also use greater than. So variable 1 is greater than variable 2, which would come back false because variable 1 is not greater than variable 2. Well, variable 1 is greater than variable 2, which is not true, so it comes back false. You really have to think about how you're saying these things so that you don't get yourself confused. The next one we have is less than or equal to. So you can also have variable 1 is less than or equal to variable 2. And we know that that will come back true, but this would also come back true if we had 2, because now it's equal, and that would change that this past one to false because it's not less than, but it is equal. So let's go back and make that 1. And then alternatively, we can also have variable 1 is greater than variable 2, which comes back, or greater than or equal to variable 2, which would come back false because variable 1 is not greater than or equal to variable 2. So those are the 6 types of comparison operators. There's equal to, not equal to, less than, greater than, less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to. So the next thing we're going to talk about is logical operators. So there's 3 types of logical operators. There's and, or, and not. I'll actually put these on different lines so that you don't get confused. But you use these, we've used these in our programs, but you use these with multiple different conditional statements so that you know, so that you can control your program. So, say I wanted, what is going on? We'll make 2 booleans. We can make boolean 1, which equals true, and boolean 2, which also equals true. So, if boolean 1 and boolean 2, then print whatever. So, we're saying in this, if boolean 1 and boolean 2 are both true, then we can print whatever we want to print. So the AND operator makes it so that both of these things, both boolean 1 and boolean 2, has to be true for this condition for this if statement to happen. Alternatively, we can have OR. So boolean 1 or boolean 2. And then so we'll have this print OR and this print AND to kind of explain it. But so if we change this to false, with the OR operator, only one of the 2 conditions has to be true. So since if boolean 1 or boolean 2 is true, then you can print OR. For the AND, you need both to be true. You need both boolean 1 and boolean 2 to be true for it to happen. So with this new setup, this would not print. But the OR would print because one of them is true. And then the very last one we can talk about is not, and we'll say not boolean 1. So we know that boolean 1 is true right now. So this is going to basically do the opposite of whatever it is. So if boolean 1 is true, then we can say then it's going to be not. So not is like weird because you add the double negatives. So if you're using falses and stuff, but so it's saying if Boolean 1 or yeah, it's if Boolean 1 is not if Boolean 1 is not true, basically. So it's going to return whatever the opposite is. So since Boolean 1 is true, then the not is going to make it false. So then this print statement would not happen. So would not print. Alternatively, let me make this again. If we have this with Boolean 2, it would print because Boolean 2 is false and the not makes it a true, so then it would print. So it's a very complicated system as you add more and more of these these logical operators and more comparison operators. As you add more variables, it's hard to tell what's what and it gets confusing. So you really just have to break it down one step at a time and think about it. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to email me. I know this is a complicated topic and it's hard to do. So the last thing I said I would talk about is flow control, which is just controlling what your program is going to do. So we did this with all of our programs. We said if this would happen, else this will happen. And that's just controlling what's going to happen. So if Boolean 1 and Boolean 2 are true, then we're going to print and. If Boolean 1 or Boolean 2 is true, then we're going to print or. If not Boolean 1, then we're going to print not. If not Boolean 2, we're going to print not as well. Or I'll put not 2 just so that we can distinguish. But this is just controlling what is going to happen. So we have if statements that control this happens, otherwise, this happens, else we have else statements, this happens. And this controls what is happening in our program. And this can be a large block of code with tons of things happening, or it can just be one line of code. But this controls the flow of our program. So that's all I wanted to talk about for this video. So to kind of recap what you need to have on your cheat sheet, you're going to need the different comparison operators, which there are 6 of them. There's equal to, not equal to, less than, greater than, less than or equal to, and greater than or equal to, and a little explanation of them. Not too much because not a lot needs to be explained, more so just what it means. Then you need the 3 different logical operators, which are and, or not. And then just a little explanation of what flow control is and why we use it in our program. So that's all I have for you today, and I'll see you later, juniors.